racing, Basil. The damp, the drizzle, the fog.
Well, it's not always like this, dear. It changes.
My husband's like the climate. He changes. This morning he went on for 2 hours about the bloody weather.
Welcome to episode 9 of the Fawlty Towers podcast, where you'll never find us complaining about the weather.
No, we're used to it by now.
Yes, always dreadful.
But I think that's one of the benefits of climate change. We'll become the type of climate that folk want to come to. It'll be too hot everywhere else.
Yeah, and we'll charge them.
Lots.
Make a fortune out of it. Can't wait.
Hoteliers in the United Kingdom are rubbing their hands together already.
Every cloud, so to speak.
Absolutely.
How are you, Ian?
Fairly well today, Gerry. How are you?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm alright, yeah.
Nothing to complain about this week?
No, well, yeah, I have, but I won't.
Good. It's not what the people are praying for.
A different episode this week.
Well, I think folk would complain if we did the same episode.
Small cast, small number of scenes used.
Yeah. Do you like a Waldorf salad yourself?
Love one.
Really?
Never had one.
I don't like walnuts.
Yeah, I would give it a bash, but yeah, I'm not sure if I've ever seen one on a menu.
No. It seems to me more like a side dish than an actual dish of its own.
Yeah.
It's like a coleslaw sort of thing, like you would have it with an actual salad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it didn't seem very filling, and it sort of contradicted what he wanted at the start of the episode, Mr. Hamilton, but we can get to that in due course. Get it? Yeah, okay. Do you have a starter for us this week, Ian?
As always, a wee amuse-bouche.
Crack on.
In Waldorf Salad, Basil and Sybil encounter a uniquely challenging guest when Harry Hamilton arrives from California with an outsized appetite and an attitude to match. With Chef Terry off finessing a fin, can Basil feed the feisty foreigner adequately, or will his efforts to satisfy the Hamiltons fall short of a home run?
Delicious, Ian. Thank you. We begin in the dining room this week. I don't think we often begin there. Usually reception.
It's a nice observation.
We find Basil, Manuel and Polly rushing around serving guests. It's very busy for a change, whilst Sybil relaxes as she, ironically, annoys a customer.
Yeah, she's being quite irritating here. She tells this man everybody needs solitude while he is becoming more and more irascible.
Basil then takes a complaint about some half-eaten prawns from a woman who suggests that they are off.
Yeah, Basil takes offence at this. He's pointed out quite rightly that she's happily eaten half the prawns before complaining.
Yeah, it's an odd one that I can see both sides of it. Sometimes you're not quite sure. Maybe it is just a different sauce or something. Especially
with prawns, if they've been frozen and they've not been defrosted right, they can be super fishy. It's not nice.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a big fish person. I mean, I can eat a prawn. That's about as fishy as I go. Bit of scampi.
Scampi. Oh, it's langoustine, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do like a bit of fish myself.
Basil does, however, get some of his own medicine when her husband asks for a deduction of half of the bill, or certainly the prawn portion, and he will then expect the remainder if his wife vomits it up later on.
Yes, if she brings it back up, they'll seek the other half to be dealt with adequately in the morning.
At the same time, a couple of elderly ladies, and this is odd, why would you not just use Tibbs and Gatsby?
It could just be because they've got them complaining and that would be out of character for Tibbs and Gatsby.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
In any event, they don't continue their complaint when Basil asks them how things are going.
No, it's this British trope of not wanting to make a scene. I'm not sure if that exists today, if it ever existed, but...
Oh, no, I think that's possibly still fair. People maybe reluctant to send food back or complain too much.
Yeah, but do you think it's a British thing? I mean, that was always the, and in context of this episode, the Americans would be happy to make their opinions known, whereas the British would be more reserved. I'm not sure if that is the case. We've certainly dealt with plenty of people who like to complain.
Yeah, I don't think it would maybe break down along national lines any longer. Mm-hmm. There's still people who are reluctant to complain, but maybe not because they're British.
Yeah, I must admit, it would take something quite bad in a restaurant for me to complain.
Yeah,
if the food wasn't great, you would just sort of complain to your partner, and then even then, I still generally leave a reasonable tip unless it's been really bad. Probably shouldn't.
Well, fair. Yeah, it's a bit different. Tipping in America is certainly different because it makes up a proportion of the server's wage. But over here, yeah, you can be a bit more choosy because it's in addition to a living wage.
Yeah, I think obviously times are different. What you don't want to do is not complain, but then complain on social media or TripAdvisor. That's a bit off. If you have a problem, allow the restaurant to try and make amends whilst you're there, I would say.
Yeah, it's unreasonable to not mention something and then complain about it. But people do.
They do, yeah.
Absolutely do.
Anyway, where are we? Yes, another table.
Well, Manuel's come in and he's given these women a jug of water that was meant for a different table. So they don't look very happy.
And there is another couple who have been waiting for 30 minutes for their order. And the wife, she is about to complain when Manuel appears with her dinner.
Yes, he comes back out, but the husband's told her there's no point complaining, they're leaving tomorrow, they just won't come back.
Yeah, but it's the wrong dish.
Yeah, the wife gets the right dish, I think, but the husband gets, I think, the same as her instead of something different.
And Manuel doesn't understand that he doesn't want it taken away. He's not cancelled it. It's simply not what he'd asked for.
Yeah, because he does want to change it, but it's because he didn't order that. It's not because he's changed his mind.
And when he ends up trying to complain to Basil about it, he has to listen to Basil's problems.
Well, he joins in with the complaint about Manuel and how useless he is.
Yeah. He says, how do you think I feel I've got to pay for him, work with him. And he mentions having to pay for his airfare. Now, that doesn't ring true. Who would pay for a waiter to come across? And especially back in the 70s, there was no EasyJet or budget airlines where you could get a ticket for, an equivalent of 80 quid return or a £50 single.
He's maybe just made that up, I don't know. Do you think half an hour is too long to wait for a meal?
Depends. I would suggest in that restaurant, in that dining room, yes. 5 tables, without a doubt. And also, it depends how you service the customers whilst they're waiting. If you let them know that it's going to be perhaps half an hour and you offer them a drink if it's extra long, then yeah, how you manage it, how you deal with it. I've certainly waited 30 minutes before. But again, that can be the style of restaurant. If you've had a nice large starter and you want a little bit of room before if it's going to be an experience where you're eating over several hours, but in a Turkey hotel, I have to expect it within sort of 15 minutes of having my first course taken away.
Fair enough.
Did that answer your question?
Well, yeah, give me your point of view. I don't know if half an hour is when I would be at the point of fury like this woman seems to be. I might be annoyed.
I think things were different back then. There wasn't that eating culture in the UK. It was,
give me my food.
Give me my food, finish it, move on. It's not the Mediterranean style.
Fair enough. Manuel does come back with the correct dish. I think it's a salad that the man wanted rather than the fish.
Yeah, but things get worse when, after placing it in front of Mr. Arid, I think his name is.
Okay.
Manuel, that is, spots something.
He takes it back and stands there examining it.
Basil joins him.
Well, Basil takes it away from Manuel, puts it back on the table, speaks to Manuel, then takes the dish away again. They've got a funny habit in this place of taking food away from people.
They've got a dreadful habit of, and it happens again in this episode, but yeah, they touch and...
Once you've served my food, leave it alone. It's mine now.
Do not molest my food, yeah.
They shouldn't be doing this.
No, I wouldn't accept it. I would...
Even if there's a fly on it, like Manuel's indicating, I'd rather that than somebody's fingers in it, which is what Basil does. He reaches in to try and move things around.
The thing is that if there's a fly in your food, okay, and you send it back, you know that out in the kitchen they're just going to remove the fly and give you the same...
Maybe that one bit of lettuce, yeah. But I'd rather the illusion than have someone's fingers in front of me on my dinner.
And the wife, she has her own problems.
Well, shortly just before she raises her problems, though, they think the Johnsons at the other table want to know where their main courses are.
Yeah, I think it's lamb.
Lambs, yeah, they've both ordered lamb.
Yeah. Tell me about Mrs. Arid.
Okay, so she's put salt on her place.
Why?
Because she likes the salty fish.
But she's not put salt on her place.
No, because there was sugar in the salt cellar.
Schoolboy error.
And there's a slight and quite amusing exchange with Basil when She said that there's sugar all over the place.
Yeah.
He wants to know what she was doing with it.
I think Polly quips something as well.
Polly does her usual couple of puns. I think she talks about it being a sweet place and she's going to replace it.
So Basil goes with Polly to the kitchen to sort things out. And at this point, Sybil informs the two old ladies that they can't cancel their dessert. Why not?
All the chefs just opened the tin, apparently.
Again, people thinking that was acceptable back then.
Well, I think the joke is that it's not acceptable, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
That's why it's funny, because they're expecting a fresh fruit salad and they're getting a tinned fruit salad.
Yeah, I'm not sure if... I don't know.
If you've got a chef, you expect it to be freshly prepared food.
Oh, certainly now. I'm not sure if back then that would be a given.
Well, the options, tinned fruit salad or ambrosia creamed rice.
Yeah.
With Devon custard.
Sybil then annoys the single diner again with her chat as Basil comments to her about how busy it is and that whilst he agrees he can cope on his own, pureeing his loved ones might be more difficult.
I think he points out to Sybil that once he's dead, she'll have to do all this.
Mm-hmm. The bell goes at reception.
Yes, Basil at this point is carrying these plates of lamb for the Johnsons.
Mm-hmm.
But rather than serve them, despite Mr. Johnson asking if they're for him, he takes them through to... I think he says, are those mine? And Basil says, not yet.
Yeah.
Takes them through to the reception. Why does he not just hand... Surely get them out of his hands and be... Anyway, he heads through to the reception and puts the plates of food down on the counter.
He does. I think before actually he walks through, Mr. Johnson says there are two lambs here, meaning for his table.
Yeah, you get a quip about them.
Basil says he'll have them removed if they annoy
Don't
him.
bother him.
Yeah. So we're at reception with his plates on the countertop and he welcomes the quite glamorous Mrs. Hamilton. I think Basil is quite taken with her.
Yeah, I think he certainly wants to impress her. He's perfectly pleasant. And when Mr. Johnson comes through and takes his lambs away, Basil apologises to her for the rubbish quality of guest.
Yeah, and blows a raspberry at Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson is in no way out of order. He's asked for his...
It's a bit rude.
It's not... What's rude?
The way that he speaks to Basil's a bit rude. He's not very polite.
He shouldn't be polite. Basil
He should be polite at all times.
No, he shouldn't. Basil has walked out of the dining room to reception with your dinner, your plates, and you've got to go and get it yourself. That's unacceptable.
Well, for a start, he doesn't know it's his dinner. If there's only 3 things on the menu, it could be anybody's lamb.
No, there's only 5 tables there. It doesn't make any difference anyway.
There's
He's walked
no
out.
excuse for rudeness. He should be polite and kind.
There are fantastic excuses for rudeness.
Yeah.
Anyhow. Yeah, Mr. Johnson comes out and jokes her.
Well, after Basil blows that raspberry, he turns back and tells Mrs. Hamilton to enjoy the self-service.
Yeah. Basil, I think, turns his back to get the Hamilton's room key. And at this point, Mr. Hamilton enters.
He does.
But when Basil turns round, he doesn't appreciate that they are a couple.
No, Mr. Hamilton's quite unhappy. He complains it's taken them 5 hours to get down from London on the narrow roads, including the M5.
Yeah. He moans about the weather.
He does. Basil points out that the road shouldn't be a problem if you had a British car because they have steering wheels. I don't
really understand that. No. Anyway, and I think this is the type of attitude that offends Basil. He's very proud to be British, and he doesn't like these upstarts coming over here and insulting his country.
It's just the fact that Mr. Hamilton's complained about the road at all, so Basil's just thrown something back at him and taken offence.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he takes this opportunity to hint to Mrs. Hamilton that this is another rubbish guest.
Yes, and has to then try and wriggle his way out of the situation when she introduces her husband to him.
Yeah, and she knows what's happened. You can see she knows what he's done, and he goes on with a charade anyway, pretending he was talking about paper rubbish that he gives to Sybil.
Yes, he picks up a piece of paper lying in the desk and claims that he's referring to that and throws it in the bin.
Idiot.
Things don't get any better, however, when Mr. Hamilton asks about the food.
Thank you. Do we need to reserve a table for dinner?
Dinner?
Yes. Problem?
Well, it is after 9.
So?
Well, we do actually stop serving at 9.
9.
Well, look, if you could go straight in.
Just
I'm
give
sure
them 5 hours to get here. We like to freshen up, maybe have a drink first, you know?
Yes, you couldn't do that afterwards?
Do what?
Well,
You mean have our drink before dinner, after dinner, freshen up and go to bed?
well, if you could, it would make things easier for us.
Shall we go to bed now? Would that make it easier for you? We're a little tired, fella. We want to clean up and relax. We'll be down in a few minutes.
Yes, but the shift does actually stop at 9.
9. So why does your shift stop at 9, huh? You got something terminal?
No, but that's when he, in fact, stops.
Now, look, we drove from London to stay here, right? Are you telling me that you can't stay open a few minutes longer so that we can eat properly?
What, we can do sandwiches? Ham? Cheese?
We want something hot.
Toasted sandwiches?
You're joking. Not really. Can you believe this? What the hell's wrong with this country? You can't get a drink after 3, you can't eat after 9. Is the war still on?
No, but it's the staff, you see.
Oh, the staff.
We have to get the staff.
How much? What? How much of this Mickey Mouse money do you want to keep the chef on for half an hour? 1, 2, 3, 20 pounds, huh? Is that enough?
I'll see what I can do.
Thanks.
Not a very polite way to introduce yourself.
No, there's a few points I'd like to raise within that clip. So the first one is that, I don't think Mr. Hamilton has been entirely reasonable here. Now, I understand he wants something to eat and he's had a long drive, but this is a small, equivalent of a one-star hotel in Torquay, where it's basically a family-run hotel and they don't have the staff. You can't expect this isn't the Dorchester. It's not the Ritz. It's not the Waldorf.
No. What Basil should be doing is saying, we've stopped serving. Here are some restaurants in town that are still, if there are any. But I mean, most places won't be serving dinner after 9 o'clock at night.
No, I mean, you'll still be in there, but most won't be taking new sittings.
Yeah, by the time he gets himself freshened up and has his drink.
Yeah, and also, I mean, Basil didn't simply say, sorry, can't help you. He offered an in-house alternative. I mean, he offered sandwiches or toasted sandwiches. I think that's fine at 9 o'clock at night.
Even in bigger hotels I've stayed at, the room service menu will say after 9 p.m. These, club sandwiches, basically. That's your option.
The other point related, do we think, therefore, that Basil, and this is obviously before any the internet and TripAdvisor, etc., do you think Basil has been putting adverts in places that over-exaggerate how grand the place is?
Yes. I think that was established back in the first episode. I don't think he'll have stopped just because of that one bad experience.
I mean, in the past, he has attracted knights or barons, whatever it is.
Well, he had the guy from the Rotary when they had the special gourmet night.
Yeah.
But
no, the first episode.
Yeah, well, he wasn't really a lord.
But there was 2 lords.
Yes, the 2 that came at the end.
Yes. He's attracted doctors and psychiatrists, etc. So these are people who you'd think would be affluent enough to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
they've obviously been missold this to some extent. That's his fault.
I think so, but then it never really comes up as a point of discussion, does it? They never say, we were told, apart from Mrs. Richards, she obviously said that she had been sold a particular view, but in a bath. And they were the only thing when she got the bath. So the view, maybe fair enough, you can oversell the view, but what else is he overselling? Is he just saying it? Is he lying about the number of stars it's got? Is he?
If we give him the benefit of the doubt from what we have gleaned so far in this episode and in a previous episode, the wine has been fine.
Yeah.
No one's ever, apart from Mrs. Richards, complained about the size of the rooms or the cleanliness. And in this episode, the Hamiltons have no problem with actually the food, the wine, and the rooms when they get what they're after.
Everybody else had a problem with their food.
Well, that's in this episode.
We'll get to mostly that. It was with getting the food. It was only really the 2 ladies who didn't like their food.
Yeah. So I think the hotel is generally adequate. It's just as the service.
Yeah, Basil could almost do better just by staying out the way.
Yeah, take a step back. Just be courteous and polite and not in your face.
He's got this, and I think this is probably coming from the guy that he's based on, this thing about, this is my domain, and I will intercede in all things.
Yeah. Even
if I don't like doing it.
Yeah, and finally, quickly, both Basil and Manuel looked shocked when Mr. Hamilton pulled out this cash and offered £20.
From the way that he did it must have been a wad of fivers.
Yeah, it was 4 fivers. Now, if you remember, Mrs. Richards talked about the cost of her room. It was £27, 23, whatever it was. It wasn't that much more than this £20. So if you try and work that out and say, right, cost just under the cost of a 1 or 2 star hotel. I mean, today that type of hotel you could get, I don't know what, 60, 70 quid. You know, it's not a luxury hotel. So given 70 or 80 pounds or whatever it is doesn't seem that incredible.
Well, it's okay if it's for nothing, if you're barely profitable.
Yeah, but Manuel looked at it as if he'd never seen such money.
Because he's probably paid about £2.50 an hour.
Yeah, back then. Yeah.
So that's a day's, or more than maybe 2 days' work for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough.
But then he didn't look that amazed at the £70 that Basil won on the horses.
No, well, that's the thing. Yeah.
And it was made out to be a massive victory, wasn't it, when he won that money?
I mean, £75 still a nice win. I wish I could win £75 in football these days. In any case, a shocked but delighted Basil takes the money and heads through to the kitchen to speak with Terry.
Yeah, he wants to catch him before he leaves, because I think Sybil had said just before that Terry and Polly and Manuel were leaving.
Yeah, he's out of his whites. He's tidying things up when Basil tries to play it very casual when asking him to stay on a bit later.
Yeah, unfortunately, Terry has a karate class to attend. He takes it very seriously.
Oh, yeah. All that throwing and rolling around.
Very committed to his martial art.
Mm-hmm. And Basil is forced to agree to paying him 1.5 hours overtime, with him doing the washing up.
Yes, and he's only going to stay on for half an hour, so that's triple time.
However, Polly puts her foot in it.
Yes, she lets slip that he's actually going on a date with a Finnish lady.
Mm-hmm.
But
she's not finished, she's only 28.
Why would this bother Basil?
It shouldn't.
I mean, other than the fact Terry's just lied to him.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose from Terry's point of view, he's lying to him because he doesn't think going on a date is a good enough excuse to not work.
Yeah, you see, this is where Basil is being unreasonable. His employee's shift is finished. Doesn't matter if he's going on a date. And in fact, I would suggest standing up a girlfriend is worse than not missing a sports class.
Yeah, I mean, for a moment I thought, oh, is Basil sending him on because he doesn't want him to miss his date? But no, he's obviously not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd think from Basil's point of view, his brain must be going, he's already identified this man as an annoying and difficult customer.
Yeah.
Take as much of it off yourself as possible. Just give Terry what he wants. Let him deal with this guy.
Well, I think he only gave Terry a fiver.
Yeah, a fiver.
So he's 15 quid up for doing nothing, personally.
Yeah. He's just taking the hump at this deceit that he's perceived.
Well, that's where it all goes wrong, and that is the thing that Basil is greed here. Or is it showing...
I think it's ego.
Ego, yeah, that his hotel can't cope with the high expectations of his American guests. Because this is an episode that if he just simply says, sorry, chef's away, you can have sandwiches or local restaurants, but there's nothing else we can do at the end of it. He gets himself into this situation.
Yeah,
here.
And of course, he has a menu he's going to give to the guests, so he thinks I can handle these 3 dishes.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't realise the guys can start asking for things that aren't on the menu.
But again, it was £15 up.
Yeah.
This time, £15 up for doing nothing.
He should just have accepted that.
Yeah.
But then it wouldn't have been a very funny episode if he'd done that.
No. So, what happens?
You know, he kicks Terry out, takes the money back from him, and Terry and Polly and Manuel leave.
Yeah, and back in the dining room, Sybil is reading a book, having a smoke, and eating her dinner when Basil shows the Hamiltons in. Yeah. And it's at this point they confirm that the room is very nice. They've got no problems with that at all.
Yeah.
And I think we have to accept that because he is not the type who would let it go.
No, he would certainly be raising a point if he wasn't happy with his room.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the opportunity to pause the episode and find out all about this book, thinking they're never going to mention this. This was some great trivia, but unfortunately they do come back to discuss it in some detail.
Okay, do you want to tell us what you know anyway?
Okay, sure. It's Never Love a Stranger by Harold Robbins. It's his first novel from 1940. I think he wrote quite a lot of novels. He's quite prolific. It's all pulp novels. There was a movie made of it in 1958 with Drew Barrymore's father and the guy from Lassie and a young Steve McQueen.
Very good. Yeah, there we go.
So the Hamiltons want to order some pre-meal drinks like they discussed earlier. But Basil's not quite up on his cocktails.
No, he's not very urbane, is he? Initially, Mr. Hamilton orders a Scotch and soda and a screwdriver.
Yes. I think Basil takes it that he wants an actual screwdriver.
He does, yes. After a bit of confusion, Mr. Hamilton cancels the Scotch and just wants 2 screwdrivers.
And Basil's somewhat confused, but he thinks he can handle that until it's explained to him what a screwdriver is.
Yes. Now, again, I'm quite sympathetic towards Basil here. This is a rural hotel. This isn't... I mean, it's a fairly...
I don't think I would know a screwdriver. I don't. Do we call them screwdrivers here?
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, I looked up myself, and it is a standard cocktail. It's in the sort of cocktail Bible. If you learn the trade in the States, it would be one of the classics.
I thought you would just call it vodka and orange.
I think we do.
Yeah.
My wife drank them in the past, but she always just ordered a vodka and orange.
I think the name I saw somewhere comes from American workers on the rigs in Saudi Arabia, where you weren't allowed to drink, putting vodka in their orange and mixing it with their screwdrivers.
Yeah. So I've got, let's say, sympathy towards Basil. But again, all I would have to say is, I'm not sure what this is. Can you explain? And the Hamiltons, to that extent, or Mr. Hamilton doesn't seem that unreasonable. He might sigh a little bit, but he would tell you, and that would be it.
Yeah. No, I think Basil needs to appear in control and makes himself look worse by doing it.
Yeah. He goes off to get the drinks, and at this point, Sybil returns, and Hamilton again is perfectly pleasant when he says that he hopes they are not intruding on her meal.
Yeah, that could have been sarcastic, but I think he's genuine.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the way that it's written, they could have delivered that in a sarcastic way, but I don't think so.
No. We find out his wife is British. She's been out in California for 10 years and mentions a lot of the benefits of living there.
Yeah, the climate that we're going to get in about 5 or 10 years once it's heated up everywhere else.
What does she say? What does she like about it?
She likes to go swimming in the morning and skiing in the... Well, it's not that she likes to. You could, in theory, if you wanted,
Yes.
go swimming in the morning and up skiing in the mountains in the afternoon.
Yeah. Harry says that he likes England, but finds the weather too gloomy. And of course, this niggles with the returning Basil.
Yes, he must stand up for his country.
And he disagrees, but without the backup of Sybil, as we heard in the introduction.
I don't think people in the south of England now would accept that it's gloomy. It's quite a warm climate in the south of England now.
Certainly compared to up here, yeah, they get a lot more sunshine and heat than... Basil rightly calls it later, or at this point, the English Riviera, and I think that's quite
I
accurate.
don't think it's sarcastic at all. I think that's a legitimate nickname.
Probably doesn't compare to California, mind you.
Or the actual Riviera.
No.
Sybil tells Basil about the swimming and skiing combination, and he points out that must be quite tiring.
Yes. And then he boasts about having palm trees in Torquay and asking if the Hamiltons have got any back home.
I think they mentioned that Burt Lancaster has one at his house.
Yeah, so that's the rumour.
Unfortunately, the drinks that Basil's brought are rejected.
They are, and again, I have to say, I've got some sympathy.
Yeah, they didn't specify they wanted freshly squeezed orange juice.
Yeah, I mean, over here you would say a vodka and fresh orange. You wouldn't say a vodka and orange.
No, but even fresh orange, you would still take that out of a carton.
Yeah.
Fresh orange is orange juice. It's not from an orange.
Yeah, and I have to say that Mrs. Hamilton irritates me a little bit because while she seems to be, no, certainly she isn't as aggressive as her husband, she could placate him a little bit more. I think
I've seen her described in some sources as a peacemaker. I don't think she's a peacemaker at all.
No.
I think she's very much behind her husband in most things.
Yes, it's unacceptable. She says, "Oh, but it's just back home. This stuff, is freely available."
She's not apologetic about it.
You're not back home. You're in a different part of the world. So what might be?
Yeah, in Orange County where they grow oranges.
Yeah, I mean, it's like going over to a restaurant in California and saying, "Yeah, I like a haggis supper."
Yeah,
and
this batter isn't the right type of batter. Why are you tempuraing my
haggis? We can get that no problem back home. Why are you not? It's just unreasonable.
Yeah, it's not even fresh haggis.
Fair enough. It's quite hard to hunt them over there.
Well, they don't come out in that sort of climate very often. They're probably mostly underground.
Yeah, and I've heard it's hard to breed them. They've only got 4 of them in the zoo and they're trying to get them to mate. Anyway.
Sybil is asked at this point how long she's been married. And she says since 1485. Is that just a joke about, it seems like it's been a long time?
Yeah, it wasn't very funny.
No. She found it funny. She finds herself actually very funny.
But she does go on to talk about her desire to visit America, and they talk of Harold Robbins and his book that she's reading, and I think she then quips to Mrs. Hamilton, who needs to read Harold Robbins when you've got the real thing.
Oh yeah, because Mrs. Hamilton has said that she likes to read them when Harry's away, but doesn't have time when he's in town. So is she joking that he's a gangster? Is that what Sybil's point is?
I think it's just a sort of rough, tough American type.
Because I don't think Mrs. Hamilton looks very impressed at
Yeah.
the comment. She doesn't laugh anyway.
Of course, Basil doesn't understand Sybil's attraction to the Harold Robbins type and goes on to insult the trash that he writes.
Yeah, well, he missed Mrs. Hamilton saying that she reads it.
Yeah.
And when Sybil leaves, he rips into Harold Robbins and is only stopped by Mr. Hamilton saying that they both enjoy his books.
Very, very matter-of-factly.
And Basil, as is his style, tries to pretend that he wasn't really saying what he actually said, and everyone heard him say.
Yeah, he said he was talking about Harold Robinson.
Yes, terrible writer.
Hamilton isn't interested in this nonsense and instead asks for a Waldorf salad, which Basil clearly has no idea how to prepare, much like the screwdriver, and thinks that perhaps they're out of Waldorfs.
Yeah, he tries to push both the Hamiltons towards an option that's actually on the menu.
Yeah. However, losing patience, Hamilton snaps and shouts at Basil to get the chef to make one as he scampers off before returning a moment later.
He's not absolutely positive. He's almost got it. It's lettuce and tomato, walnut.
No, it's celery, apples, walnuts, grapes.
In a mayonnaise sauce.
Right. Incidentally, he did ask me to say that he does specially recommend the patty tonight.
I don't want patty.
Or the grapefruit? The grapefruit.
How's it done?
Well, it's halved with a cherry in the centre.
Look, I haven't paid you £20 to have some guy cut a grapefruit and half a stick of cherry in the centre.
Exactly.
I want a Waldorf salad.
Absolutely. One Waldorf salad.
And a green salad for me.
And one green salad, yes. And if we can't manage the Waldorf salad...
I want a Waldorf salad and to follow a couple of filet mignons.
Steak.
Steak. Done rare.
Done rare.
Not out of a bottle.
Not out of a bottle, right.
Would you care to see the wine list?
Thank you.
May I ask, did you say you'd paid £20?
Yes, but it's not the money. My wife and I, we wanted dinner and...
This can't be right. There's no reason Chef couldn't stay.
I'm awfully sorry. He's forgotten already. Walnuts, cheese...
No cheese. It's celery, apples, walnuts, grapes.
Right.
In mayonnaise.
Right. Now, come on.
Sybil is a wee bit out of order there.
Yes, there is a very good reason why Chef couldn't stay on. His shift is finished.
He wasn't getting paid.
No.
And even if he was offered the money, he wasn't obliged to stay.
Yeah.
He had a date.
And as we've mentioned earlier, I mean, I think Basil is well within his rights to say, okay, we have asked, or you've paid for the chef to work a bit later, but it doesn't mean to say we've got every ingredient that you want, off the top of your head. He has the ingredients for the menu that we had today or that week. So Basil could easily have said, sorry, we don't have walnuts or celery. It wasn't on the menu.
Yeah.
You can't stock everything.
No, absolutely not.
So in the kitchen, as Basil rummages through a box of vegetables, Sybil enters to ask him about the £20, and I thought he was going to get into more trouble than this, but no.
No, he doesn't even really respond to that, does he?
No, he's more panicky at this point. And after telling her what has happened, she decides to try and calm his increasing mania and explains why it is called a Waldorf salad.
Yeah, she tells him it's named after the hotel and asks him to sort out the wine. She'll deal with the salad, but he's not interested in listening to that.
No, because it's given him an idea, and he heads back out to the Hamiltons and offers them what?
A Ritz salad.
What's a Ritz salad?
Grapefruit and tomatoes and apples.
I don't know. Whatever they've got in the kitchen.
I tried to look and see if anyone had actually made one of these up and put maybe a photo of it online, but I didn't see that. So if any of the listeners want to make up a Ritz salad and send us some photos of that and tell us whether it's any good,
Yeah.
the ingredients are in the episode and you can let us know all about that.
Harry bluntly declines the offer anyway. And so Basil goes off on a tall tale about how and why they are out of celery.
Pointless.
It is.
There's no need for this. Just say we don't have any celery.
This results in an irate Harry standing nose to nose with Basil and giving a somewhat rousing speech about hotel management and leadership, perhaps more appropriate to the military.
It's not reasonable behaviour. He shouldn't be in Basil's face like this.
He shouldn't. I don't know if it's happened already or a little bit later, but at one point he picks up a knife and points it towards him.
Yeah, it's really, really aggressive stuff. I don't think Basil should be expected just to take that.
No, he shouldn't. But Basil's obviously a bit of a bully. I mean, he's quite happy to pick on Manuel, someone that he can physically intimidate, and also he has the employer-employee relationship
he's a bit
over
of
him.
a flat-track bully where it's easy for him, but if it's actually a challenge, he's not just going to back down.
Because you can tell he's certainly intimidated by Mr. Hamilton.
Absolutely, he is. It's a little bit like in season 1 of Blackadder, when Blackadder would simper in front of the king, but he would take it out on Percy and Baldric.
Yeah, Blackadder, you say?
Well, if people want to find out more about that, there's actually quite a good podcast I've heard.
Oh, is there?
The Blackadder podcast.
Okay.
A couple of charming Scottish fellas.
Really?
I'm on it as well.
Basil doesn't quite convince Hamilton that he has the gumption, the balls to threaten to burst Terry's ass. And so Harry is ready to head through to the kitchen himself before he is stopped by Basil.
Yeah. He doesn't want, obviously, the fiction to be exposed, so he steps in the way and tells Hamilton he will deal with this.
And as he leaves, Sybil comes in with perfectly acceptable green and Waldorf salads.
Much to the confusion of the Hamiltons. As you would expect.
Of course. And at the same time, we can hear, and they can hear, Basil berating his chef, and I like this, threatening to break his bottom.
Yes, Sybil unfortunately doesn't hear this and can't intervene. She's gone through to reception.
Yes.
So she comes back then and explains that their chef used to work in Dorchester.
Yes, not the Dorchester.
No, not the Dorchester. Mrs. Hamilton perked up at that for a moment, but no. At this point, Basil comes back with 2 green salads.
He does, but can we stop there for a second? So we're told that Terry, the new chef, has been there for 6 months.
Yes.
Now, there's been complaints about the food, or certainly the 2 old dears. So do we think Terry's actually a decent chef?
I'm not certain, but I don't even know if he's been there for 6 months, because Sybil gives another story later on.
Yeah.
She says he's just started.
That's true.
And time is a little bit wibbly-wobbly in this episode. In fact, this series generally.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sorry, where were you?
Yeah, Basil with his green salads and additional confusion because at this point he is presented with Mr. Hamilton and his Waldorf salad.
Yes. Now, Harry seems quite pleased with the fact that Basil is struggling to comprehend what is going on, but his good humour is short-lived when Basil picks up his plate and takes it back through to the kitchen for an
What's he
explanation.
touching his food for again?
We're at a stage here. Problem solved. That's it. Don't do anything else. The Hamiltons are perfectly happy.
Yeah, why are you intervening in this? You could, if you want to take it out on the chef, you don't need to take the food with you.
Yeah.
Just go through and yell at the chef.
But I don't even know what he's doing because there's not a chef through there.
No, I know. But even to maintain the fiction.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sybil goes through, thumps Basil in the head and takes the salad back off him.
Yeah, I think, does he call her a cow? Somebody's called a cow.
Well, he's acting like he's talking to the chef, but he calls the chef a cow. He's really referring to Sybil, who's just taking it off him and hit him in the head.
Yeah. There's a little bit of domestic violence there.
Oh, it's all in good humour, hey? No.
I mean, it's not really because in the past it's been very cartoon-like.
Yes, but Basil's now actually hiding a wound from everybody.
Yeah, with a hat. Then if the roles were reversed, it wouldn't be...
It wouldn't be funny at all.
No, and it's different when you're picking up Manuel and turning him upside down.
That's, cartoon, over-the-top, hyperbolic sort of comedy.
Mm-hmm.
This is more... She was actually annoyed at him and she just walloped him in the head.
Yeah, and later on you see a bruise.
Yes.
So in the past we've never really seen any the result of any physicality.
Yeah, and it builds something. I'll come back to this, but it could have built a very good finale.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Sybil at this point reminds Basil to get the wine, and he goes off to do that, returns with his hat on, as you said, while Sybil talks more to the Hamiltons.
Yeah, and I'd like to say as well, Basil is now acting very meek.
Yes,
it's like an abuse.
Cowed.
It's like an abuse victim, where it's okay. I've stepped out of line. I won't do that again.
As soon as Sybil leaves the room, he starts acting up, trying to present and then read a letter from the chef to the Hamiltons, who aren't interested.
Yeah. Well, I should say that before that, a concerned Mrs. Hamilton asks if Basil is okay, and Sybil says, yeah, it's just been a long day.
He walked into a door.
Exactly. But she goes on to mention, this is interesting, that they've not had a holiday in 8 years. Although she's taken plenty of time off. She lists
She goes through a massive litany of things. She takes a day off to go golfing, a day off to spend time with friends, weekends away, weeks away.
Yeah.
So it's really just Basil that's had no holiday.
It is, which leads me to this question. Do you think that Basil, when they took over the hotel and got married, I mean, you're assuming that this relationship wasn't as toxic at the outset, is this a nervous breakdown through overwork? That, he was fine, he was going to, it was a hard-working hotelier with visions and wanted to make this place great. But he's never been allowed to take a day off, and it's not just that when they're both there. We've seen before, she reads her magazines, doesn't really help out. He's got to do lots of things. I think that he's overworked, he's stressed out, he is, or has had, breakdowns.
I think to a significant extent as well, he's seeing his wife disengage from their relationship. So he's left essentially stuck in this situation where he's got to keep running the hotel. He's got to keep putting up with her, even though she's given nothing back to him.
At the same time, she's flirting with male guests all over the place.
Yeah, and any time he offers any kind of affection, it's rebuffed.
Yeah.
It's not a nice situation for him. You can almost understand some of his more eccentric behaviours.
You can, yeah. Anyway, where were we?
Yeah, Basil insists then on reading this letter, much to Hamilton's annoyance. He just wants his steak, and has spotted smoke pouring through from the kitchen.
Yeah, the letter itself, I think, absolves Basil from any blame.
I don't even think the content of the letter matters. The guy didn't want to hear it. He was happy.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
And so I think he got quite deflated, as if to say, right, what is it now? What's now? What's the next problem? Basil goes through to the kitchen following these billows of smoke.
Yeah. I think he obviously finds burnt steaks when he gets through and starts another fictional chastisement.
Yeah, and he seemed to do a bit of role-playing, move from one position to the other. Unfortunately, Harry Hamilton has decided to follow him through this time, and he witnesses this charade.
Yes, and Basil, for the third time in this episode, tries to cover it up by pretending that's not what happened, even though everybody saw.
This is the final straw for Hamilton, who walks back through, tells his wife to get their stuff. They are leaving. Quite rightly, I think at this point, it's a madhouse. You don't want to be staying there.
Yeah, it's a little bit concerning. But it's his fault.
A lot of it is his fault, yeah.
Anyway, as they head up the stairs, Basil nips through the side door from the kitchen to tell them that their steaks are nearly ready. Don't go. But Hamilton is on to him.
He is. Mrs. Hamilton has went up to her room, but Harry stops and turns back and lets Basil know that he is aware, as you say, of what has been going on. And this attracts the attention of the other guests, who gather as Hamilton uses it as an opportunity to garner opinion on the hotel and the service. Yeah,
it's quite convenient for him that the entire group of guests, everyone who's staying in the hotel, all gather in reception.
Well, I think what's happened is they have, after having their meal, they're all together, they went through to the bar. So they hear the ruckus and all come back through.
Who's serving them in the bar?
Who knows?
The Major.
The Major, yeah.
Anyway, so they're all gathered there for no apparent reason, as Hamilton says this is the worst hotel in Western Europe, but the Major sticks up for Basil.
Yeah, but he's a doddery old fool, and I mean, he what's he comparing it to? I suppose a hotel in...
He says there's one that's worse. In Eastbourne.
Yeah.
Hamilton goes round the guests. He wants to ask them whether they're happy with the service, but Basil intervenes in that traditional British way and puts the question directly, knowing, I think, that few, if any of them, are going to complain to his face. Yeah, he bullies them into pretending they're happy and then uses this to try and make the Hamiltons or Mr. Hamilton look unreasonable. He says he'll give him his money back because that's all that matters to him, but us British have... Yeah, but it's British versus American values, isn't it? Nonsense. Yeah, no, absolutely. Unfortunately, Mr. Johnson is not happy. Yeah, he pipes up, leading the rest eventually to join him in making their complaints known. Basil says the only way of making the Johnsons happy would be to put straw in their room. That's yeah. It doesn't really endear him to anybody, does it? However, these complaints seem to satisfy Hamilton, who leaves them with Basil, who is now going to have his say.
This is typical. Absolutely typical. The kind of arse I have to put up with from you people. You punts in here expecting to be hand-weighted on hand and foot while I'm trying to run a hotel here. Have you any idea of how much there is to do? Do you ever think of that? Of course not. You're too busy sticking your noses into every corner, poking about for things to complain about, aren't you? Well, let me tell you something. This is exactly how Nazi Germany started. Layabouts with nothing better to do than to cause trouble. Well, I've had 15 years of pandering to the likes of you, and I've had enough. I've had it. Come on, pack your bags and get out.
They're packed.
Order 10 taxis, will you? I'll pay for them.
Come on, come on.
What?
Out. Everybody out. Come on upstairs, pack your bags, adios, out.
What about the training?
Well, you should have thought of that before, shouldn't you? Too late now. Come on out. Rouse. Rouse. Rouse.
What are you doing?
I think when he says hand weighted on hand and foot, that first hand maybe wasn't in the script, I might suggest.
Yeah.
But it's a good enough take that they're going to go with it.
And I think that performance there is indicative of what I was saying. It's a bit of a breakdown. He's letting us all out now. He's had 15 years of having to put up with this stress and the complaints and whatever's been going on with lack of help from Sybil.
I think he sees these people as ungrateful because he's trying his best to satisfy everything for everybody, and they are just complaining.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I say, it's unreasonable because they're all different people, so they've only been there for a few days. But to him, it's just the customers are constantly complaining. So yeah, I do feel slightly sorry for him in this episode.
Absolutely, I agree.
We heard Sybil appear at the end of the clip there. She's demanding to know what he is doing, and he says that after having a little chinwag with the guests, they've decided that they are for the off. Well, either that or he is.
Yeah, and this is quite brutal. I think Sybil essentially kicks him out at this point.
She does. There's a beat for a moment, a little stare, and he accepts that it is him who's for the off. They tell Sybil that it has been an interesting 15 years, kisses her, says his goodbye to the guests, and goes to leave.
In my opinion, they should have made this the final episode, and it should have ended with Basil going out, looking up at the rain and smiling broadly, and then walking away.
Yeah, I think that would have been a poignant way to end the show. I mean, I think just before he went outside there, again, the harshness was elevated when Sybil calls him back, and you're perhaps expecting her just to give him a bit of an ear bashing, but no, she tells him to hand over his keys, which he does. And it does feel like a breakdown here.
Yeah, but rather than that ending that we talk about, he has an epiphany, and we get a comedy ending.
Yeah, of sorts. What happens?
He goes back in and asks for a room.
Yes,
he's going to be a guest.
Orders breakfast, wants a Waldorf salad. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that we could have cut it a moment or so earlier with just bad, but it would have had to have been the final episode.
Yeah,
but then it would have been leaving it on a bit of a downer, wouldn't it? Like I think
it's a high for Basil if he's leaving.
Maybe he's walking away from his marriage, his business, out in the rain with just the shirt on his back.
He's finally got rid of the wife that dragged him down, the guests that never stopped.
Yeah, I think I've been harsh to the guests and the and Sybil over the course. I mean, I don't know, but it would have been an interesting ending. Yeah,
I suppose it would also be too kind on Basil in a way, letting him away with obviously, without having any sort of comeback for his own faults.
Anyhow, so it did have a different feel this episode.
Yeah,
to
I
the
think
others.
it was a lot less. I mean, we've had a lot less Polly in this season generally, but there's less Polly, almost no Manuel.
Terry's an odd one. They bring him in for the second season. They've hardly used him. This is 3 episodes now, and I mean, this is an episode about food and about the kitchen.
Yeah, it was a strange choice.
Yeah,
in the other episodes that he was in, he didn't really need to be in.
No.
I wonder if they had different ideas and they just didn't work out.
He certainly features more prominently in the future, but there's only 3 episodes to go.
Yeah.
But overall, enjoy it?
Yeah, no, it works. It's a good episode. It works well.
Mm-hmm.
And it plays on the same sort of ideas that we've seen previously.
It does. It was first broadcast on the 5th of March 1979. Now, from this point on, the scheduling differs from what we've seen in the past. So this is over a week since the previous episode. Harry Hamilton was played by Bruce Boa. Nice name.
Yeah, alliterative.
The American was in fact born in Canada and died in 2014, aged 73. You may have seen him in Full Metal Jacket, The Empire Strikes Back, The Nightmare Years, Return to Oz, Astronauts, Yanks Go Home, Z-Cars, The Troubleshooters, or The Saint, to name a few. His sister was the renowned psychoanalyst Marion Woodman, if you're into that sort of thing. And he was good friends with John Cleese.
Makes sense.
Claire Nielsen played Mrs. Hamilton. She was born in Scotland, actually, in 1937. Still with us. She has last been on our screens in Holby City, I think. Also Taggart, The Crow Road, Taking the Floor, Scotch and Rye, The Two Ronnies, Chintz, Z-Cars, The Dick Emery Show, The Brothers, The Revenue Man, and Ghost Squad is in her credits. Mr. Arad was played by Norman Bird. He died in 2005, aged 80. A very prolific character actor. Some of his performances include the voice of Bilbo in the Lord of the Rings animation from the 70s. Oof, Breakpoint, Wurzel Gummidge, Coronation Street, Yanks Go Home, Steptoe and Son, Harry Worth, The Saint, Z-Cars, and It's Not Me, It's Them.
A few crossovers with Bruce Boa then.
Yeah. His wife was played by Stella Tanner. She died at the age of 86 in 2012. She was in EastEnders, The Bill, The Bright Side, Brookside, Q9, My Son Reuben, Z-Cars, Coronation Street, The Rag Trade, and Emergency Ward 10. She was also a singer and toured with Buddy Holly in the UK the year before he died. Her husband was actor David Bohr. And finally, we have seen Mr. Johnson before, played by Terence Connolly, and was also Mr. Waring in A Touch of Class, where he also had to shout and go after his food and drinks and what have you.
Still waiting for his gin and orange or whatever it was.
Yeah. Any trivia for us?
Just the sign was Flay Otters.
It
which
was.
is an anagram of Fawlty Towers with the W's removed.
So not an anagram then?
An anagram of, quotes, Fawlty Towers with the W's removed, end quote.
Okay. The original TV listing title for this episode was USA. Don't like it really.
No, this is better.
Yeah. The two elderly ladies were credited as Girk and Hare.
I like that.
And we find out in this that the Major has been with them for 7 years.
Yes, and they've been married for 15, which is also the amount of time they've had the hotel.
Yeah, so they must have, got married and got the hotel at the same time.
Interesting.
Yes. Favourite scene this week?
Oh, I would say there's so many. I think in terms of my favourite lines, I liked Polly's puns.
Okay. I am going for Harry Hamilton's speech about kicking Terry's ass and trying to rile Basil up.
Fair enough.
Next week, we have another food-based episode.
Based, is that like a turkey?
The Kipper
That's based.
and the Corpse.
Okay, until then, you can keep in touch with us by chipping in on social media. We're at Fawlty Podcast on both Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to talk about this episode in particular, if you go to fawltytowerspodcast.com, there will be a post up already for this particular one. And please do keep on rating and reviewing us on iTunes. It makes a big difference if it keeps going every week. So if you haven't got around to it yet, it would be very much appreciated if you could take the time to do that. Thank you.
Okay, until next week.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.